Now we're live again, and I am here waiting for my wonderful guest for Amazing Authors, Tabitha Forney. As I wait, I want to remind everybody that this is an empty room. A story is waiting to happen, and you are the author. So without further ado, I'm going to make sure that here's Leslie and Tammy. Hey guys, I'm going to look for my wonderful author to join me. You guys, I'm super excited in interviewing her because not only is she an amazing person, but she wrote an incredible, see if she can jump on now. She's here, and we have a wonderful conversation waiting for you guys. And without further ado, that beautiful woman is there. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I am great. I was telling them.
Sorry, I just wanted you to have butterflies on my shirt.
Oh, perfect. Oh my God, perfect. So it can't go wrong. We're totally on the vibe going forth today. So, I love this show because it's not about actually the books. It's about the author's journey. And I think when people get to know the authors, they get more excited about reading the books. At least that's my thing. So welcome everybody. It is March 30th. Like I said before, this is an IG Live on the Amazing Authors, and I'm here with Tabitha Forney. This is an empty room, a story waiting to happen, and you are the author. This is episode 10, and I can't believe that I'm actually on 10. This has been quite a wonderful journey so far, and I can tell you that every time I read another one of these great books by She Writes Press, here's her beautiful book. The cover's amazing. I get even more excited that I get to be in this creative world because that is such a blessing, and I'm like super excited. So without further ado, welcome, Tabitha. This is really exciting for me, and congratulations coming off your finalist announcement with the Benjamin Franklin Awards for General Fiction. That's amazing. That's quite an accomplishment. You should be so proud of yourself. I just want to acknowledge that that's nothing to sneeze at. My gosh, being recognized in that group of independent authors. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I was really honored. It was actually recognized in 2 categories, which, I've entered a lot of these and I didn't get any recognition at all. So not to brag, and I understand what it's like to not be there because I did enter a lot that I didn't get. So I was very, very honored. And I just wanted to say to you, it is important for readers to get to know authors. And thank you so much for spending your time and your amazing energy, your boundless, it seems, energy to introduce us to your followers. So thank you for that.
I'm really excited. And one of the things that I love more than anything is that when someone sits down and gives their time to writing a story, and I love it. That's my whole thing. You can be the greatest storyteller of your life, or you could write a really, really bad one and you just need to change that chapter and move forward. But your book, it was actually inspired by your own personal story. And I want to get into that, but I'm really, really honored that you're here. It's good to bring you into this place to have this conversation today around your novel, around your story, around your path, and also time to celebrate you and your commitment to that goal, because it's no small feat writing such a wonderful novel. And we have Leslie who's saying congratulations to you. I want to introduce everybody to you. You write books to appease the voices in your head. Now, if anyone out there can relate to that, I'm sure you can. How awesome is that? That genius, that literary genius that keeps bothering you and bothering you and bothering you. And I think it's amazing, and you're a mom too, an attorney, which I love that. We'll talk about that. And Ashtanga, Yogi, who lives in Houston with your 3 kids and husband, and who was on your husband who was on the 85th floor of the North Tower on 9/11 and lived to tell about it. Right. Okay, wow. I mean, I know I spelled that out, but that's a lot in your one concise, statement. Let's start there. My God. And the fact of the matter is that you wrote about such a experience close to home. Like when that voice in your head said, sit down, it's time. How did this come about? How did this journey start?
Right. So yes, as you said, from my book, I was on the 85th floor of the North Tower on 9/11, and he, came down 85 flights of stairs and then through the underground to get out. So that was obviously a very impactful moment in our lives. And, he got out, and so we kind of felt obviously lucky and blessed, and we just kind of went on with our lives, you know, and didn't process it all at once. Obviously, it took us a while to process it. And for me, I'm kind of a slow processor, which is why I'm a writer and not a talker. But, you know, it was about 14 years later when we were back in New York. So we moved back to Houston, you know, in the meantime, in about 2003. And then we went back to New York in 2015, and we were both there. And just as kind of like a morning excursion before I was coming back to Houston, we went to the 9/11 Museum. And it was like right after it opened, and it was just so impactful. I don't know if you've ever been or experienced it. Yeah, it's just incredible the way that they tell the story, and all of those memories just came rushing back. You know, just it was like an audio visual experience. You get, you know, Katie Couric talking on the Today Show while you're looking at the pictures of everybody who's impacted and all the artifacts from the site and all that. And it just all kind of came back to me. And as a writer, you know, I process emotions and the things going on around me through words. So I was especially taken by the story of the people who fell to their death. I think we all are like, just, you know, you're kind of horrified, and it's horrific, but it's also very, it's like, as a writer, I went to that place, you know, what must those people have gone through. And it's a horrible, horrible place to go, but I just felt like it was so hidden. It was like, I don't know if you remember going back there, but there's like an alcove in the back with like warnings to those who enter, that the imagery is graphic and disturbing. And I felt that that was appropriate, obviously, but I also felt it was really sad because, you know, people don't really even know who all those people were. And so they're kind of like nameless and faceless. And, you know, you need a warning to show people what happened to them. And I just felt like maybe shine a little spotlight on that and maybe tell a little bit of what that was like. And so when I went to the airport, I just immediately sat down and started typing out the prologue, Daniel's story, the only part of the story told in Daniel's voice. And that came out pretty much, I mean, I edited a lot, as you know, as a writer, but that came out pretty much as it was published when I wrote it in that moment.
Well, let me read to everyone the synopsis of your book, because I think you know, conceptually 9/11, everyone has their own 9/11 story, like the where you were, and certainly some people closer to the epicenter than others, like yourself and your husband. I like how you approached this story because it didn't stop on that day. It kept going. And, you know, we all who survive our own intimate traumas, nobody else really knows what's going on other than the person who's experiencing it. So I always like say, be a little bit more kind to all the people who surround you on the daily, because you never know what they're really going or what they're carrying with them. And I think you did a beautiful job in this book showing us. You showed us what happened to her. And let me just read it to everyone so they know what I'm talking about. It's the end of the summer, 2001. Erin O'Connor has everything she ever dreamed of: good friends, a high-powered career at a boutique Manhattan firm, and a husband she adores. They have plans for their life together, careers, children, and maybe even a house in the country. But life has other plans. Doesn't it always sometimes? Daniel's work on the 101st floor of the World Trade Center. Daniel works on the 101st floor of the World Trade Center. Erin drinking margarita on a beach in Mallorca, helping her best friend get over a breakup when she hears a plane has crashed in Daniel's building. On a television at a smoky hotel bar, she watches his building collapse. She makes her way home with the help of a stranger named Alex, and once there, she haunts Ground Zero, nearby hospitals and trauma centers, plastering walls and fences with missing person flyers, but there's no trace of Daniel. After accepting Daniel's death, Erin struggles to get her life back on track, but makes a series of bad decisions and begins to live her life in a self-destructive fog of booze and pills. It's not until she hits rock bottom that she realizes it's up to her to decide, was her destiny sealed with Daniel's, or is there life after happily ever after? Now, even as I read this, the pages of your book return and come alive, and I have a lot of questions for you, because I think to put yourself in that and adequately, you know, bring out the emotion, that vulnerableness, that just pain that she suffered is an incredible skill. And it must have been very difficult for you to put yourself back into her shoes, because you could have been Erin O'Connor. So tell me a little bit about that part of the journey, and what compels you to go there.
Right. So yeah, you kind of hit on it. It was my what if story. So the stories start out similar, obviously not the same because she is a very different character than I. But when you go through something like that and you make it out alive and unscathed, relatively unscathed, you always go back to those scenarios of what would have happened if this, what if he had been a little bit later or a little bit higher up, a little bit further down. And so I wrote this to explore all of those what if stories. And it was really hard, like you said, getting it, because I wanted it to feel authentic. And so it's kind of like method acting. I did method writing. So I really put myself into Erin's character as I was like sitting at the keyboard with my hands up, like typing. I really tried to imagine how would I have felt if that had been me? And it was so close to me that I feel like I was able to tap into that, because there were a couple hours where I actually thought that he was probably dead, because I watched his building go down, from a pub in London. I was stuck in London. She was stuck.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of parallels there. And so to go to her grief, it was just like one more step for me to go to what if I had never heard back from him? And then how would that have felt? And so there were moments when I was at the keyboard just with tears streaming down my face, because I was feeling it so acutely, and I'd have to, step away for a bit and then come back. So yeah, it was difficult, but at the same time, I think it was, therapeutic for me to get there and for me to process it and understand what it was like. It really helped me to process it. And I hope that it helps readers understand a little bit about what it was like to be there.
And, that's the day really a lot about this country changed too. And I think that, it's so funny you were speaking about the voices in your head. Certainly Erin was talking to you, and who knows, Erin or even Daniel or, whoever could like been like, I need this story told. You need to be my storyteller. Sit down. It's like, sit down, and I'm not going to let go of you until you sit down and tell it. So, I think, for me, I'm a little magical with my mindset, at least as far as thinking, and who, like, what it compels all of us to sit hours and hours in front of a computer screen, pounding away on the keyboard, for sure.
It's funny you said that, because I do like to think that, that I'm telling somebody's story and I'm channeling somehow something, out of the 96% of stuff around us that we don't know what it is. I feel like I like to think that there's some magical element, that there's some like, this story needs to be told and I just don't understand why. And actually Daniel was based on a real person, a victim of 9/11. His story really, when I was at the museum, you can get on those displays and you can kind of drive further and further into each story. And he's just one that caught my eye. And I won't say his name because it's not really based on him, but that's where Daniel sprang from.
Right.
From spring. He just physically the way he looked, and a little bit, he had a kind of a boyish charm about him, and a little bit about his story, because the real life victim was engaged to be married. So,
what you just said reminds me of in the Hamilton, at the end, they say, who lives, who dies, who tells our story. And if this is in fact based upon your inspiration from that moment in time when you were walking through, the ghosts of 9/11, basically is what it is, really. Because when you're on that site, at least for me, it's ethereal. It feels like it's a holy place. And it feels very, I think, in many respects, the names and what you see on even this by the fountain outside, and that one tree that's still standing by the fountain, you stand in great respect as to what lessons they want us to know or learn, and for me, what kind of people were left behind and how much love couldn't be expressed in that point in time. So going back to you, was that the moment? I know you're an attorney by trade, and I know all attorneys like are great writers because you have to be,
Yeah,
and
true.
also great orators because you have to be, right? At least for some in some respect. But what have you always wanted to be a writer? Is that always something that called to you, like a writer of stories, of novels?
Yeah, definitely. When I was a child, I didn't know that I wanted to be a writer because my world wasn't big enough to think about that when I was growing up. But what I do know is that I loved to read books, and that's how I processed the world, through books, understanding that there were whole other worlds out there that I didn't know about, and I had to hide to read books. It's a long story, but I used to hide at my neighbor's house, and I have fond memories of my elderly neighbors bringing me lemonade and cookies while I would sit in their reading nook and read books,
Oh
just
my
to
God.
from
Well,
my. So I have just that's how I read so many books over and over, and I didn't have a lot of access to books, but I had a set of the Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and I must have read it like 20 times, the whole set,
uh,
20. And yeah, I just love reading. Like that was my favorite thing to do. But I didn't think that I could be a writer because like that's not a real career path, writer.
uh,
It is hard, as we all know. Um, but yeah, in my 20s, I kind of started thinking this is what I want to do, trying to do it. And then really in my 30s, I started taking writing classes, and I met my best friend who's also a writer, and she has really inspired me a lot as well. And so just, slowly convincing myself that I could do it. And I'm still have to convince myself every day that I can do it.
So I want to go back to what you said. The world wasn't big enough. I love that you said that, but I'm wondering why you said that. If I may ask that question.
My world wasn't big enough.
Right. Your world wasn't big enough.
My world. And nobody set that example for me. And I didn't think that was really a possibility for people like me. Like I didn't even think about it. It took like I grew up and went to college. My sister also went to college, but like we were first generation college students, and I think I might have been the first one to graduate. I don't know, she might take issue with that. But that really opened my eyes, and then becoming an attorney, and there were a lot of things that opened my eyes later, but when I was growing up I had a very, very narrow view of the world. And I was also a child of my mom was a single mom, and then she remarried, and there just wasn't time for fluff. There wasn't time for things that didn't make money or that weren't efficient and useful.
It's so interesting because what storytelling is, and it's so funny that we consider it, fluff, not a real job, this, that, and the other. But my God, we all literally live and die by our stories, and it continues legacies. And it's so funny to me that you say that your world was not big enough, but yet you wrote about probably one of the biggest events, right? So talking about challenging you to tackle on something that literally changed the world as we know it. I find that fascinating. And how do you feel on the other side of publication? Because now it's out there since September 7th. We have the same publication dates. How does it feel on the other side now that you've successfully done it? You're a writer. You're a published writer.
I think I have to remind myself of that. It doesn't feel that different. I still feel like I'm scrambling, and I still feel like I'm trying hard to, yeah. It's a daily journey, and you don't ever feel like you've gotten there. I don't feel like I've arrived. I don't feel like I've gotten there. I feel like there's so much more work to do. I feel like this was one book that I put out there. It was one project, and I am definitely happy that I was brave enough to do it, because there were many times, I don't know about you, because you're so brave and amazing and out there, but there were many times when I wanted to pull it back, like even to the very end. And I don't know at what point that it was like, okay, there's no turning back now. But there was even after a lot of stuff had gone by, I thought, I could probably still pull it. So I am proud of myself that I let it go, out into the world. And I always said if it just connected with one reader and maybe, opens one person's eyes, then I would feel like that was a success. So, and it's connected with so many more than that. So
many. And Lee is even saying, I relate to the idea that our worlds aren't big enough as children to think about being a writer. And then I needed life experience to become a storyteller, which is actually really true. I mean, how could you ever have contemplated as a child that your husband was going to be on the 101st floor of a building that terrorists were going to take down? I mean, that just seems so outlandish, to be quite honest, at least back, especially when we were growing up. So, you know, it's interesting how life happens and the experiences happen and how we choose to tell the story. Because my question was, what was your intention other than relating the story of this person that you came upon as you walked, you know, that sacred spot? What was your intention when you closed the book at the end and finished it?
It was absolutely at the top of my mind was honoring the victims and telling their story the best way I could.
Mm-hmm.
And making, you know, going through all my edits and all of the research, I did a lot of research just to make sure all the details were right. I feel like I owed it to the victims who can't speak for themselves to get it as right as possible. I knew I would never get it completely right because it is fiction.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get those details as accurate as I could conceivably get them. And so I spent a lot of time on that. The first chapter, the prologue, is the most heavily researched, edited, vetted. You know, I really wanted to get that right because I felt an obligation to Daniel, even though he's fictional, because to me, he represented all of the people who were in that situation.
Yeah.
And to their families, to tell it the right way. I feel like I owed it to them. And then I didn't really write it for them, though. I wrote it for all of the people who were watching from the outside who didn't know what it was like and who wanted to understand a little bit about what it was like, because I felt like I was in kind of a unique position since I kind of straddled that line. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was in kind of a unique position to show people what that was like. So that was my goal.
You know, you know, it's how did you, after that experience with your own husband, get past or move through the fear and I mean, is this somehow a part of your healing journey to put this out there? And then have you gotten that kind of response from other people who went through the similar situation like you did, that thank you for writing this? Or what's been the response other than, you know, great, it's well written, solid, tight, you know, especially with the anniversary that we just had gone through with regards to 9/11?
Mm-hmm. I haven't gotten a lot of, like I said, I didn't write it for people who were impacted by 9/11 because I feel like it was probably maybe too difficult for them to read it. And I totally understand that. I have gotten from a few people though, who are like, you know, I was a few blocks away, or, you know, like Zibby Owen's best friend was in the, I think it was very difficult for her. Not necessarily my book, but this, you know, the whole 9/11 is a very difficult topic for her. So I've gotten feedback from people who are like that, who were maybe impacted, but not as directly as Erin was. And then also people who like lost their husband in other ways. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's bigger than 9/11. I've gotten a lot of feedback like, oh, I lost my husband. And you accurately portrayed like what it's like to grieve. And the fact that everybody has a different way of grieving and everybody reacts differently. And Erin went into a hole and substance abuse, and other people like the widows that she saw at the tea shop were, you know, kind of pouring it into action to do something to better the world. But everybody experiences it differently. And there's no like one size fits all when it comes to grief.
So I'm going to shift all of this on its head and say, what are the most exciting, fun takeaways you've had from this whole process now? Because I think that, you know, yeah, it's work. It is. We have to go do the hard work. It's inspired, by the way. It's inspired work, but it's still work. We got to sit down and we got to commit to it. But there's definitely those things that we get that fulfill us from that. And I'd love to know, you know, 3 maybe that you have to share with us today.
Yeah, well, meeting people like you, obviously, that's been amazing. You know, meeting other writers journey and connecting with other people on like 2021 debuts on the Facebook group, and connecting with the community of writers, and honestly, just the satisfaction that I did it, that I was brave enough to put it out there. It can't be overstated, right? Like, as a writer, you know, it doesn't seem like it's that hard, but it's so hard. And if you are really writing the stuff that you should be writing, it's going to be really hard to let the whole world read it. And so just being able to let that go, like when people come up to me that like in different areas of life and they're like, I read your book, and I'm like, oh, okay.
You're like, be kind, be kind.
That you hadn't like mixed like your creative pursuits with,
Yeah.
It's been really interesting. I think it connects you to people more because it's like we're all sharing this human experience. So that's been really satisfying. And yeah, just the momentum, I think, of like just going through all the steps. You know how many steps there are? I mean, I was bummed on some this cohort calls where everybody was so far ahead of me with all their checklists and PR and marketing and all those things, just knowing that like, yeah, it's a lot, but you can do it if you just set out to, do something every day towards your goal. So was that three things?
Okay. No, I love all that you said. I want to speak to the fact that, it's funny because when you're around people who are already doing what you should think you should be doing, the anxiety kicks up, and then you have to balance yourself, take a step back and say, okay, surrender. The process is going to be different perhaps for me. I can't but my anxiety is like, oh, this is my chance and I'm gonna, all of that. So it's kind of like, but then we have our fellow authors like, it's going to be okay. You wrote a great book. It's going to be okay. So that conclusion, and by the way, this was my third book that I put out. So I know like that, like immediate need to have instant gratification at the outset can be delayed many years thereafter. It can hit at different times. So I'm always, keeping that in mind, but it's, it is a process. You have to trust it. And the cool thing is that, like you said, you put your book out for many awards and you got a big one. So all of us, I'm telling you this, we're all cheering you on because we all feel in our cohort that you getting that recognition is kind of all of us celebrating and getting recognized as well. So we're cheering you on there, Tabitha. Don't worry. You're not alone in this. And when you do win, we'll be like, yay, this is great. It's super, super exciting. I want to go back to, you never giving up on your dream to become an author. And I want to ask you, for anyone out there who's contemplating perhaps going down that road, what would be the best, bit of inspiration or insight that you can, or advice maybe that you can give? I mean, the attorney, definitely caveated it with regarding, don't rely completely. But what would be that you would give and play and pass on to, like, say Kelly's here and she's on that path too. Maybe you can share something that might inspire them to keep going.
Hi, Kelly. I met Kelly at my Austin book launch. So glad to see you.
Awesome.
I always say, this is always the number one thing I say is never give up. I mean, I think never giving up. If you really, really want to be a writer, if you don't want to be a writer, go do something else now. But if you really want to be a writer, just never give up. You can't give up because, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I thought, should I just give up? But I know that what separates the people who are ultimately successful from those who are not is those other people just gave up. Yeah. And so just sit down, just do something every day that takes you towards your goal and keeps you connected to your work. So that's literally the best advice I can get. I mean, it's also surround yourself with people who inspire you. There's a lot of other like things but you'll get that along the way. You'll get all of that, and then you'll be doling it out if you never give up. So,
I want to laugh because as you're saying that, I mean, I've sat down the computer and going blah 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 blah, stupid. This is dumb. I don't want to do this. Oh my God. Okay, done with your pity party. Move on. I have an idea. Okay, there you go. Something compelling came out of blah blah blah. Stupid. But I always say nobody else does that because I'm a big temper tantrum girl. So I'll admit it all left and right and up and down. But all the literary giants of the world, I can imagine that they're all composed all the time. So
yeah, absolutely.
I see you.
Like that, of people who are like, no, this was me. Like, it's a mess. It doesn't just pour out of you and like get printed on the page, And when I say never give up, I mean, there's going to be moments where you take a break, right? There's going to be moments where you have something going on, a family crisis, like with your mother. And those are moments where you are taking a break, you're lying fallow, you're not giving up. Like, keep your eye on the long-term game, the long-term prize.
I love it. And I wanna ask you, what do you have for your future writing plans now? Are you working on something else? I know you're an attorney. Do you still practice as well, or answer
I
the
do
question?
yes, I do practice. So that, I have to juggle everything. It's kind of a lot, but I do mostly nonprofit work right now, and then
Okay.
some different sorts of things. I am at a firm. And so I kind of fit this all in kind of on the side, but I have another book actually ready to go, and I've got beta readers, and I'm kind of like shopping it around and trying to figure out where the right home is for that. So there's one manuscript that's finished, and then I'm working on, it's actually a fictionalized account of something that happened in my little neighborhood in Houston. It's called West University Place. There was a PTO scandal, and so it's got dog murder, suicide, embezzlement, gossip. It's like kind of
Is that the kind of law you practice?
little thing. No, no, I wish.
Defense. I was like, embezzlement. I was like, you got to know what you're talking about, man. I'll tell you one way or the other for sure, right? Oh, that's
Actually,
awesome.
it's a nonprofit, so maybe I'll tap into some of that. But no, it was really like a neighborhood scandal and it's totally fictionalized account. So anybody who's out there listening who's in the hood, you won't see yourself in it, or you might see, unless you did something really spectacular, then you might get.
I always find that people impute themselves into the story anyway. So regardless, they're like, well, that was me. I know that was me. You're like, that is not you. But anyway, if you think so, go for it, right? For sure. Oh my God, that's awesome. And so you have, looks like two books, looking to make their way out into the world again. And one of the things I do love, and I will say this about authors in general, they're so incredibly interesting. Even to have a conversation like this with you today, what an honor and gift it's been. And certainly, I told you before, we all are celebrating and cheering you on. One question I always have, as far as authors are concerned, was there ever a time that you actually faced the notion that you weren't going to finish your story, and what in fact changed you to say no, never give up?
Yes, there was. So this book actually kind of had a meandering path, and it's kind of a long story, so I'll shorten it, but basically I got an agent in 2017, and she wanted me to bigger it. And so I spent like a year revising it, taking out a lot of Erin's story, bringing in a whole new character. And then she left her agency. Long story short, lost the agent. I ended up bringing it back to just Erin's story. And then I split off the new character. Her name's Rosie. She was the 911 dispatcher who
Yes.
Neil's last words. So that's actually the other character. And she has the second book I have finished. That's Rosie's story. So,
Oh, that's so exciting. And I can't imagine this book ever being without Erin's story. I don't think it would have been at least relatable to where I can sense that you care about her, and even if she's spiraling into, whatever kind of mess you're talking about. But,
yeah.
you're like, even today when people do stupid things, like we can speak to, especially this last weekend, if anyone hasn't heard about the Academy Awards, and they do stupid things, we're all human, and crap happens, things happen. Sometimes we aren't our best us, but at the end of the day, back to your point, when we never give up, we can turn into the most incredible story that anyone who is willing to read it can be shared with, that to inspire anyone to go on and even past the mess, past the imperfections, but to realize that there's beauty there no matter what. And I want to say, with regard to your book, and to you, in fact, you're just, you exude an incredible, beautiful energy. I encourage everyone, if you are going on book tour, I don't know if you're finished or you're moving along, or there's more book tours to be had, certainly I love speaking to the authors, because that's where you get the good stuff. So I would totally encourage everybody to connect with Tabitha today. What is your, where can we find you if that's the case, to find out more of what you're doing?
Oh, they're all different. So it's at Toby Writes, I think is on Facebook. I don't have it in front of me. It's terrible. I think it's at, so I go by Toby as, you know, as well. Tabitha's kind of my author name. So it's like at Toby Writes on Facebook. And I think it's, oh, I don't even know what Instagram is. Oh yeah, Tabitha. It's Tabitha Writes or Tabitha Writes Books. Sorry.
Okay, so Tabitha, so at Tabitha Writes Books. So everyone who's listening or who's listening in the future, you know, go connect with her there, follow her, see her story unfold as she writes these beautiful stories. And we get to see where the next one drops, you know, when it drops and how it drops. And then we can tell another amazing story with her as we watch her author story unfold. So is there anything else you want to add today? I'm so grateful that you took the time and to speak about your journey. I know that you've inspired everyone who's on this call or this IG live today. You know, give us something to walk away with today from those voices in your head.
Yeah, never give up and be true to those voices. Like listen to those voices in your head and not the voices outside of you who are trying to tell you what to do.
Take the doubting naysayers and shoo them away. Shoo them away. And I am gonna second what you just said. I think anyone, regardless whether it's a dream of writing a story or anything for that matter, if you have a dream in your heart, don't pay attention to the naysayers. Follow your intuition. Do what she says. Never, never give up. And we will celebrate you on the journey, because it's the process that is what we all grab onto and are inspired by. The end result, yes, it's fantastic, but I always like to know how you got there. So go check out Tabitha's at Instagram. And I remember, books do change lives. Thank you so much, Tabitha, today for sharing your story. Great writing stirs our emotions, makes us feel, and those authors who are vulnerable to that extent truly aren't changing the world. And you are one of those people making a difference, and your words will get us all to think, and they made me think, and I'm really grateful. So Tammy's saying wonderful and congratulations to you, Tabitha. Congratulations. And I'm so grateful that we met on this path, and I can't wait to see what else you got in this world coming at us. So thank you again.
Thank you, Meg, so much. It's such an honor. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.